year is 1793, and Paris itself is a wound red raw and pulsing with vengeance. Deep within the stone gut of the Conciergerie, Marie Antoinette lies awake. The walls sweat with centuries of sorrow, and the echo of her breathing is the only warmth left to her. Once hailed as the living jewel of Versailles, she is now little more than a shadow watched by gendarmes whose eyes are cold by jailers, whose voices have learned to whisper her doom. Dawn stabs through a crack in the cell. She is roused not by gentle words but by the clatter of iron and the stiff order to prepare for death. She is stripped of all finery, her gown now plain and colorless, a white shroud rather than a dress, her shorn hair hidden beneath a crude cap, the last vestige of royalty, a black ribbon pressed to trembling scalp. She protests, the open cart begs for dignity, for some thin veil against the city's hate, but her pleas are ground beneath the machinery of revolution. Today she is no longer queen nor even woman, but a body to be delivered. The Sansons come executioners who once knelt to her in the halls of power, now summoned to end her story. Henri Sanson, his hands steadied by ritual records what no history can cleanse. He enters the hall of the dead where she sits with her head against the wall, shoulders bowed but unbroken. The jailer's daughter weeps at her feet, clinging to the ghost of the queen's tenderness. Marie Antoinette stands fragile, spectral, yet for a moment the grace of her old life flickers in her embrace, as if she might yet reclaim the warmth of a vanished court. She walks in silence, her footsteps swallowed by cold stone, her dress already stained by fear and the dirt of the cell. She looks neither left nor right as the guards usher her forward, but her eyes, brilliant, defiant, fever-bright, betray every memory, every loss, every hour of dread carved into her bones. Torchlight flickers on her pale face, on the white handkerchief draped over shoulders that once bore velvet and diamonds, now bowed beneath the weight of the mob's hunger. The morning air outside bites her skin. The cart creaks rough wood beneath her fingers as she is lifted before the city she once ruled. The streets are black with faces, some twisted in rage, others lit by curiosity or something colder. The roar of the crowd is a living thing, a beast fed by centuries of resentment now set loose. Their curses and laughter are knives, slicing away the last tatters of dignity. Yet for a breath, Marie Antoinette's lips are red, her gaze unwavering. She does not weep. The queen who once commanded a kingdom meets the gaze of death with naked clarity, her past glory and present ruin colliding in the light that flares behind her eyes. And so she is carried through Paris, the bloodthirsty city watching in silence and in song, as the guillotine gleams in the distance, a silver promise final and cold. The last queen of France, stripped to her core, is paraded to her end. Every step, every heartbeat, every stolen breath belongs to the revolution now. Beneath the shadow of the blade, all legacies are devoured. In the howl of the mob, in the hush before the fall, Marie Antoinette learns the last truth of power. The throne and the scaffold are carved from the same wood, and the world will never remember which side you stood on, only how you fell. Dawn creeps through the stone corridors of the Conciergerie, heavy with the scent of mildew and the hush of waiting doom. The last queen of France stands in the half-light, her beauty long since stripped by captivity and fear. Yet her lips remain red artifice, clinging stubbornly to ruined grandeur, and her eyes impossibly shine bright, not with hope, but with the certainty of oblivion. Those present executioner guard clerk lower their hats in reflex, some with hands trembling as if the air itself demands a last bitter show of respect. Only the Republic's men, grim and unsmiling, refuse this ritual. Marie Antoinette's composure cuts through the gloom. "Gentlemen, I am ready." The words are steady, but the echo is chilling. Her voice belongs not to a sovereign, but to a soul already halfway beyond the world of flesh. Formalities remain as cruel and clinical as any sentence. She steps forward, exposes the pale nape of her neck, her hair shorn ragged to lay bare the flesh for the blade. With trembling hands she presents her wrists, for binding royal blood subdued by coarse rope. Every gesture, every breath lays bare the chasm between what she was and what she has become, not a queen, but a body property of the revolution. The priest enters, words thick with nervous loyalty. He asks permission to walk beside her, his devotion to the new order painted over old rites. The request, repeated and insistent, draws a flicker of cold annoyance from Marie Antoinette, but she nods. In the presence of death, even resentment is hollowed out by exhaustion. The procession forms. The gendarmes march ahead, the abbot close by her side, clerks and executioners trailing behind. Iron boots strike stone, the sound relentless echoing through the passageways and out into the waking city. Each footstep is a drumbeat of doom. In the courtyard, the pale morning spreads itself across the cobbles, and Marie Antoinette sees the cart, the final carriage of a queen. The cart lurches through the gray dawn, its wooden wheels grinding against the ancient stones of Paris. A hush falls, then erupts into 1,000 screams, curses, hurled like stones, voices raw with hatred. Marie Antoinette stands in the cart, frail but unbroken, her pale face framed by shorn hair, every inch of her stripped bare for the city's vengeance. For a moment, terror flickers across her features, an unmistakable shudder that betrays the nearness of death. But she swallows, her fear lifts her head. In that instant, the last queen of France becomes not a monarch, but a woman caught between the ruins of glory and the abyss of oblivion. The iron gates groan open, and she emerges, a specter of lost power thrust into the pitiless daylight. The mob presses in a living wall of bodies and howls. Death to the Austrian, death to Madame Vito. The crowd's fury is a storm battering her, drowning out prayer and reason. The cart staggers, horses rear their eyes wide with the madness of the mob. Even the gendarmes, once the king's own guard, have abandoned ceremony, raising their voices to join the hateful chorus. A fist is raised, a soldier's threat trembling with cowardice. For a breath she falters, horror blooming in her eyes. The priest intervenes, shielding her with words and his own fragile dignity, but the city's appetite for humiliation is not so easily sated. The cries surge and fade, violence always just beneath the surface. A second officer and his horsemen force a narrow passage through the multitude. Through it all, Marie Antoinette stands unmoving, her back straight, her gaze fixed on some point beyond the reach of hatred. The priest murmurs to her, but she does not reply. She seems deaf to comfort, blind to mercy. Only the grinding of wheels, the stink of sweat and fear, the metallic promise of blood waiting at the journey's end are real now. The crowd grows restless, then quieter. The curses grow fewer as the cart rolls on, but the weight of so many eyes, hungry, vindictive, presses on her heavier than chains. Her regal bearing in this torment is not the dignity of a queen, but the last defense of a soul already half departed. Around her, Paris is transformed into a theater of judgment, every stone and shadow complicit in the unfolding ritual. In that morning, as the guillotine blade waits and history holds its breath, Marie Antoinette's glory and disgrace fuse into a single shivering moment. This is the final cruelty of power, to stand alone before the machinery of vengeance, watched by a city determined to strip away not only flesh, but memory itself. And when the end comes, what remains is not the splendor of crowns or the echo of curses, but the certainty that death alone can silence the crowd. The dawn is gray, the stones of Paris slick with the breath of a city ravenous for vengeance. Marie Antoinette, once adored, now shrouded in the heavy air of humiliation, stands chained and silent in the swaying cart. Each jolt rattles through her bones, every street, a reminder of grandeur turned nightmare. The roar of the mob is a living thing, hungry, jeering, dense as fog, pressing in on all sides. The last queen of France fixes her eyes on the passing facades, searching for a number etched in her memory, her only hope of grace before the blade. They pass the Palais Égalité. Unease flickers across her face, brittle as glass. She scours the windows and doors, desperate for the signal. A priest's gaze, the silent absolution denied her by law but not by faith. She finds it. Their eyes meet. The sign passes between them, a dip of the head, a silent prayer buried beneath the rattle of the cartwheels and the rumbling of thousands. For a heartbeat the terror recedes, and a faint secret smile ghosts her lips. The journey ends at the Tuileries. The cart halts. The guillotine rises in the pale light, cold, merciless, gleaming like a promise. Marie Antoinette's skin blanches, her eyelids tremble. The ghosts of children in corridors haunt her vision. Her lips move barely a whisper, "My daughter, my children." The words vanish, devoured by the clang of iron and the restless muttering of the crowd. The scaffold awaits. The executioner's father leans close, his voice a mere breath. "Have courage, madam." For a moment the queen's eyes widen, startled to find pity in the shadow of death itself. "Thank you, sir. Thank you." Her words float above the tumult, the last fragments of dignity amidst ruin. She descends from the cart, her body frail, but her posture regal, every step an act of defiance. The crowd presses closer, the air thick with sweat and anticipation. Marie Antoinette mounts the scaffold as if ascending the marble stairs at Versailles. Spine unbroken, eyes hollow but unyielding. The hush deepens, the crowd held by the gravity of her final moments, confusion rippling as she claims the platform, not as a victim but as a queen surrendering to the void. In that painted tableau, torches flickering on her pallid cheeks, the guillotine's blade glistening in the morning gloom, the mob transfixed by the spectacle of power undone, Marie Antoinette meets the certainty of death. Her legacy is neither jewels nor kingdoms, but the echo of a woman stripped bare before the machinery of justice, and the knowledge that the blade waits for all, king and beggar alike, when the world turns cold. The last queen of France, once robed in silk and crowned with diamonds, now stumbles beneath the gray Parisian sky, her shorn hair glistening with cold sweat, wrists trembling against coarse rope. The air is raw, heavy with the stench of mud and fear. Echoes of Versailles haunt each step. Yet this stairway, the steps of the guillotine, offers no return, only the descent into oblivion. She emerges from the conciergerie pale and diminished, but her eyes still catch the world, like mirrors, terrified, proud, irretrievably alone. The wooden cart jolts through streets thick with jeers and curses, every stone bearing witness to the fall of majesty. As she ascends the scaffold, confusion swirls. An abbot, desperate in his piety, tries to reach her, but the executioner's will is colder than the steel awaiting her neck. There is no more time for words, no reprieve for prayers. The platform creaks beneath her weight. We seize the queen, our hands rough where once only courtiers touched. The crowd holds its breath as we bind her to the wooden plank. Her voice, trembling yet clear, slices through the morning. "Farewell, my children. I am going to join your father." The words linger, haunting the scaffold, as the world narrows to a single merciless moment. The mechanism resets. The knife, a flash of polished silver, falls thudding through flesh and bone. Blood spatters the plank, dark and sudden steam curling in the autumn air. The hush breaks. Shouts rise, "Vive la République," a hungry chorus devouring the last echo of royalty. My hands, numb, lift the severed head to the crowd. Her eyes are half closed, her mouth slack, the memory of a final prayer lost in the roar. The body, stripped of title and name, is cast into an unmarked grave in the cold earth of the Madeleine. No monument, no flowers, just the silence of Paris pressing down on the broken flesh of a queen. Legends creep from the shadows, a wax cast taken in secret. The last beauty frozen in death, stories swirling around her remains like fog. Decades will pass before her bones are exhumed relics placed beneath the stone vaults of Saint-Denis. All that endures a few pale hairs, a pair of perfect teeth, and the rumor of grace in the face of ruin. So ends the legacy of Marie Antoinette, not with grandeur, but with blood and dust, her fate a warning carved into the city's memory. in that cold morning beneath the eyes of a city drunk on vengeance, power proved itself fleeting, and the machinery of revolution demanded its final price. All that remained was silence and the certainty that even queens must bleed.